I never thought Summer would contact me again. Back in high school, she was the one that got away. The quintessential good girl I spent over a year chasing without success. After graduation, we completely lost touch. So when she finally reached out, it wasn't to rekindle old flames, but to borrow money. When she told me she needed $30,000, I thought this was finally my chance to grasp that elusive dream. I never expected that once she got the cash, she'd ghost me. Ethan, can you please drop the lawsuit? Her voice trembled on the other end of the line. My bank account, my Venmo, everything is frozen. My dad is waiting for me to pay his medical bills. I let out a short, cold laugh. And whose fault is that? Who didn't answer calls? Who didn't reply to texts? I thought you were planning to stiff me permanently. Act like a professional deadbeat. When she borrowed the money, she had sworn up and down on the phone, voice dripping with sincerity, that she'd pay it back within a month. I looked at her through the rose-colored glasses of my high school crush. There was still a shred of that beautiful nostalgia left in my heart, so I wired her the money without hesitation. But 3 months flashed by. Forget repayment. Aside from the beginning, she recently stopped giving me even a decent reply. My high school crush was real, but those youthful feelings had long been worn down by the grind of reality. They certainly weren't enough to make me willingly play the fool. Money doesn't grow on trees. Sure, my family has money, but didn't we work hard for it? Without a second thought, I sued her. As expected, against ordinary people who owe money, the law is the most effective weapon. This belated phone call was the best proof. The sobbing on the other end grew heavier. Summer's pleading came in jagged breaths. Ethan, I'm really at a dead end. Trust me, I will definitely pay you back. Just please give me a little more time. I didn't have the patience to drag this out. I cut her off. Either pay up now or wait for the court summons. Pick one. Ethan, I really can't come up with the cash right now. Don't push me. She paused. How about we meet? I'll write you an IOU right in front of you. Outline a clear repayment plan. Please. Her voice was choked with tears. I couldn't tell if it was an act. I pinched the bridge of my nose, fighting a headache. I stayed silent for 2 seconds. Fine. We met at a coffee shop on the corner. 7 years had passed, and Summer had changed. The innocent aura of her teenage years had faded, replaced by the allure of a mature woman. She was like a rose in full bloom. I didn't know if it was intentional, but her outfit today was particularly eye-catching. A form-fitting black dress outlined her silhouette, paired with sheer black stockings and stilettos that seemed to click rhythmically against the floorboards. My gaze drifted involuntarily to her legs, only pulling back reluctantly when she sat down and looked up. A long-forgotten throb stirred in my chest. She tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear, her lips curving into a perfectly measured smile, gentle enough to overlap with the image in my memory. Ethan, long time no see. You're much more handsome than you were in high school. I nodded faintly, not feeling much. I knew what I looked like, average at best. Unless I got a professional stylist, I was only tangentially related to the word handsome. Besides, I neglected the gym since college. At 26, I was already showing signs of a dad bod. You're more beautiful than before, too. I offered a polite platitude and took a sip of my coffee. Putting down the cup, I cut to the chase. Let's talk business. This 30 grand. How do you plan to pay it back? Summer's smile froze. She bit her lower lip, her eyes darting away. She tested the waters cautiously. How about I sign a promissory note and pay you back $200 a month? Once my dad's health improves, I'll find a high-paying job and pay you back faster. A wave of speechlessness washed over me. My tone dripped with unconcealed disdain. $200 a month? At that rate, without even counting interest, it'll take you over 12 years to pay me off. That's not what you said before. You swore you'd pay it back in a month. I only lent it to you for old time's sake. As for this high-paying job she mentioned, I didn't believe a word of it. In this mid-sized city, a woman with just a bachelor's degree, finding a job paying $4,000 a month was already tough. Grinding for a year or two to hit $6,000 was the ceiling. High-paying jobs didn't just fall from the sky. It was just an excuse to stall. Summer buried her head lower, shoulders trembling, her voice thick with tears. I know I was wrong, but I really have no money right now. My dad needs long-term medication. Money is bleeding out everywhere. Her weeping was intermittent, like broken strings of pearls, yet it failed to stir even half a clear drop of pity in my heart. Time is a poison that turns people ugly. When her sobbing subsided, I spoke slowly. Done crying? If you're done, let's continue discussing the debt. Summer clearly hadn't expected me to be so cold. Her crying stopped abruptly. She lifted her tear-stained face, eyes red-rimmed, looking at me with disbelief, as if she didn't recognize the man in front of her. Ethan, how did you become like this? You used to be so kind. You were never this cold. I roll my eyes, too lazy to engage. Yeah, I used to be an idiot. I would toss and turn over a casual remark she made. I would secretly buy her breakfast. When I first lent her the money, I admit I had selfish motives. I wanted to use the loan to reconnect, maybe start dating, and fix the regret of my youth. But her ghosting me, her refusal to pay, it was like a bucket of ice water extinguishing every spark I had left. It sent her image in my heart crashing down. I would never bring a woman full of lies like this home to meet my parents. Looking at Summer, who was even prettier than she had been back then, a dark thought quietly took root in my mind. I leaned forward slightly, looking straight into her eyes. Do you have a boyfriend right now? Summer looked at me warily, her guard up. She hesitated for several seconds before whispering, No, I don't have a boyfriend. I smiled. It was a genuine smile, but one laced with calculation. If you really can't come up with the money, I paused, articulating every word. Are you interested in being my girlfriend? Just be my girlfriend for 6 months, and the $30,000 is wiped clean. I considered this term extremely generous for her. You want me to be your mistress? Summer's face darkened instantly, her tone sharp, piercing right through my intentions. We were both adults. She understood immediately. Since she was so blunt, I decided to tear off the mask. Why pretend to be a gentleman? I reached out and grabbed her hand resting on the table. It was soft. I'd never even gotten to hold it in high school. My tone carried a hint of seduction. So what if I do? Summer, you should remember, I chased you in high school. Now I'm giving you a chance and giving myself one. I fix my past regret, you get out of debt. 2 birds, 1 stone. Why not? Summer yanked her hand back as if she'd touched something filthy. Her eyes were filled with contempt and rage. She hissed, Ethan, you make me sick. You lent me the money planning this from the start, didn't you? I almost laughed out of anger. My voice turned cold. Excuse me? Didn't you contact me first? You're the one who didn't pay and vanished. Now you don't want to pay money, and you don't want to offer yourself. What? You just want to walk away scot-free? Do I look like a charity? Summer's face went pale, then red, as if I'd hit a nerve. After a long silence, she squeezed out 3 words, in your dreams. She grabbed her purse, stood up, and headed for the door. As she passed me, she stopped abruptly, grabbed the half-finished lemon water on the table, and splashed it right in my face. Ice-cold water dripped down my cheeks, soaking my collar. I wiped my face expressionless, cursing internally. She's crazy. What a toxic princess. I watched her storm off, a cold sneer curling my lips. I knew her too well. When she truly had nowhere else to turn, she would come back to me on her own. Back in my car, I lit a cigarette. The harsh bite of nicotine slid down my throat, burning my lungs, dispersing some of the agitation. I leaned back in the seat, watching the traffic outside, headlights and street lamps blurring into streaks of light. I suddenly felt dazed. When exactly did I become like this? I used to be a hopeless romantic. I naively fantasized about one person for a lifetime, believing love should be unreserved and devoted. I thought life will be like the movies, an undying romance. In high school, during gym class, I tripped and fell onto Summer. My lips accidentally brushed her cheek. Back then, I was so innocent and stubborn. I felt I had compromised her honor and needed to take responsibility. So I summoned the courage to pursue her for over a year. Sadly, it was all for nothing. But even then, I still believed in love. It wasn't until college, when Hannah entered the picture, that I slowly changed. Hannah was from a rural area, her financial situation wasn't great, and she was the one who pursued me. To be honest, I agreed partly out of hormones. A guy falling for a girl at first sight is usually just lust. Normally, a guy, even if he might have a confusing moment with a handsome man, wouldn't fall for a girl pushing 250 pounds. I certainly didn't expect to fall so deep. Because she was my first love, I gave her all my tenderness and patience. Knowing money was tight for her, I actively shared $1,000 of my allowance with her every month. When she refused to take it, I'd secretly top up her meal card. Knowing Hannah had never been to any city other than our college town and her hometown, yet yearned to see the world, I withdrew all the savings I'd kept from years of birthday money. I took her to cities she'd never seen, showed her the scenery she dreamed of. Hannah was good to me, too. She stayed up late, knitting me a scarf in the winter. When I was sick, she guarded my bedside in the hospital and even brought food to my dorm afterward, making my roommates insanely jealous. Back then, I loved her fiercely. I even planned our future. We'd get married right after graduation. I told my family about us. To get my parents to accept Hannah, I had a massive fight with them. I finally wore them down, even getting them to look out for connections so that after graduation, they could help Hannah find an easy, high-paying job. Unfortunately, all the beauty stopped on Christmas of our junior year. That evening, we were walking back to campus side by side after dinner. Just as we reached the gate, a guy in a delivery uniform suddenly rushed out, eyes bloodshot, staring at Hannah. He screamed hysterically, "Who is this guy? Didn't you say you were out eating with your girlfriends tonight? Is your girlfriend a man?" In that moment, the noise of the street seemed to vanish. I stood frozen, my blood turning to ice. Belatedly, I realized that from start to finish, I was just a pathetic clown. Of course, technically, I wasn't the only clown. That delivery guy, radiating exhaustion and despair, was just like me, a fool played by Hannah. I later learned his name was Gavin. From his broken, weeping accusations, I pieced together the whole story. He and Hannah were from the same hometown, childhood sweethearts. They both got into this university, but their families were poor and couldn't afford 2 tuitions. Gavin loved Hannah, so he gave up his admission spot. He packed his bags and entered the workforce, working day and night, shouldering the entire cost of Hannah's education. He gave everything to give her a bright future. He never expected the girl he loved would turn around and find a rich fool to latch onto, personally crushing all his hopes. I used to think this kind of melodramatic plot only happened in TikTok skits. I never thought I'd encounter it in reality. And unfortunately, I wasn't the audience eating popcorn. I was the victim. After being exposed by Gavin on the spot, Hannah's first reaction wasn't to explain to him. Instead, she panicked and turned to lie to me. "Ethan, believe me, it's not what it looks like. He's just a neighbor from home. He's not my boyfriend. He's been stalking me. I never agreed to date him. You know that being with you. It was my first time." She rambled incoherently, never once looking at Gavin, completely disregarding the feelings of the boy who had sacrificed everything for her. Watching her, Gavin finally broke. Eyes red, voice hoarse, he demanded, "You slept with him? You said you wanted to save your first time for marriage." That sentence was like a sharp knife plunging into Hannah's heart. Her face flashed green and white. Out of humiliation and rage, she slapped Gavin across the face and shrieked, "Are you done making a scene? Are you only happy if you ruin me?" The crisp sound of the slap was piercingly loud at the silent campus gate. Gavin froze, then his legs gave out and he dropped to his knees, covering his face and sobbing uncontrollably. The despair in that cry strangely dissolved most of my anger at being betrayed, leaving only pity for him. I walked up, gently patted his shoulder, pulled him up from the ground, and without glancing at Hannah again, led Gavin away. Behind us, Hannah stood rigid, face pale at total loss. I thought after that farce, Hannah would have the sense to back off and never appear in front of me again. But I underestimated her shamelessness. She pestered me day after day, blocking me at my dorm at the lecture hall, swearing oaths, insisting she and Gavin were innocent, that it was all his one-sided obsession. Her lies were elaborate, as if everything I saw with my own eyes was a hallucination. Seeing her invert black and white like this, I felt no emotion left. I just watched her like a monkey jumping around in a circus. After begging for a while and seeing I was unmoved, Hannah did something even more outrageous. She turned around and demanded emotional damages for her virginity. Simply put, knowing we wouldn't get back together, she wanted to extort a breakup fee. I laughed in her face. She was the one cheating, playing me like a fiddle for 2 years, and she had the nerve to ask me for money. I didn't waste breath on her, just dropped a line. "If you want money, sue me." But the most explosive part was yet to come. When Plan A failed, Hannah quickly changed her tune. She found me again and actually proposed that since there was still a year left before graduation, I should keep her as a mistress for the remaining time. My worldview was shattered all over again. Her bizarre behavior also made me realize something was wrong. I later found Gavin and asked him. It turned out Gavin had already sued Hannah, demanding the return of all the money he spent on her tuition and living expenses over the years. Only then did I understand. Hannah was desperate. She was frantically grabbing at me as a lifeline. Once I knew the truth, I had nothing but contempt for her. When she came to harass me again, my words got harsher and harsher until she finally saw no hope and vanished. I put out my cigarette, pulling my thoughts back from the shadows of the past. Since then, I swore I'd never give my true feelings to a girl again. Feeding my heart to dogs once was enough to teach me a lesson for a lifetime. As for Summer, I didn't love her. It was more of an obsession with what I couldn't have in my youth. The one that got away is only beautiful because of the distance. She exists only in memory. In reality, she's just leftover rice on a shirt collar. If she had truly been as clean and pure as in my memories, maybe after observing her for a while, I would have tried to pursue her properly again. Unfortunately, she didn't even pass the preliminary round. Not paying debts, ghosting, avoiding me, she had long lost any weight in my heart. Since that was the case, I naturally had to find a way to recoup my losses. There was no sentiment left to speak of. For the next week, I went to work and came home like clockwork, life calm and ripple-free. But Summer's world was already a chaotic mess. As the court date approached, she couldn't hide the debt much longer. Anxiety drowned her like a tide. She first called her best friend, Maggie, screaming hysterically the moment the line connected. "Maggie, you scumbag. You said the burger bus business would crush the competition. We've been open a month and haven't even made $2,000 in sales. Give me back my franchise fee." Maggie's helpless voice came through. "What can I do? I lost all the money I put into. I don't even know how to explain this to my parents. Anyway, if you want money, I have none. If you want my life, take it. Do whatever you want." Hearing this, Summer shook with rage. Just as she was about to curse again, the phone was hung up. When she called back, she was blocked. In reality, she hadn't borrowed money for her father's medical bills at all. A while back, while idle at home, she was sweet-talked by Maggie into believing that partnering up to open a fried chicken and burger joint would make money. Become a rich boss babe, reach the peak of life. In the heat of the moment, she agreed. Initially, it was supposed to be a $40,000 investment each. But Maggie didn't have enough, so Summer put in $50,000 and Maggie put in $30,000, totaling $80,000. To do this, Summer not only drained her savings, but also took out several online payday loans to scrape together the cash. She thought she was about to level up in life. She never expected that within a month of opening, they'd lose everything. With the loan payments overdue and collection calls closing in, she didn't dare tell her family. She could only count on luck and ask an old classmate for a loan. At least an old classmate wouldn't robocall all her friends and relatives like the loan sharks did. She thought finding the guy who used a sim for her would be an easy out. She never expected Ethan to be so ruthless, suing her at the drop of a hat. Thinking of the mortgage her family still carried and the child she had to raise. If this $30,000 debt exploded, it would be a disaster for her small household. Summer closed her eyes in despair, hands gripping her phone tightly, lips trembling as she murmured internally, "Chris, you'll forgive me, right?" A moment later, she took a deep breath, seemingly making a decision, and dialed my number again. Receiving Summer's call didn't surprise me in the slightest. My tone carried a frivolous mockery. "So, the beautiful Summer figured out how to pay back my 30 grand? The voice on the other end immediately softened, becoming sickeningly sweet, carrying a note of aggrieved pleading, a stark contrast to her earlier anger. "Ethan, can't we really discuss this? For the sake of us being high school classmates, give me a little more time, please." I shot back. "I've been tolerant enough. Am I not tolerant? You said you'd borrow it for a month for an emergency. 3 months later, you haven't paid a cent, and you ghosted me. What more do you want?" Summer was rendered speechless. The line fell silent, save for the faint sound of her breathing. After a moment, as if making a massive resolve, she tentatively asked, "Then, what you said before, about me being your girlfriend for 6 months and you wiping the debt. Is that true?" I leaned back in my office chair, lips curling into a cynical smile, looking every bit the villain. "Naturally, it's true. Why? Is the beautiful Summer willing to be my girlfriend now?" Summer's voice was as quiet as a mosquito's hum. The next second, she hurriedly added, "But I have a curfew at home. I can't be out too late at night. If you want to see me, it has to be during the day." I nodded with a chuckle, agreeing readily. "No problem. Whatever you say." After setting a meeting place, I took Summer directly to a nearby hotel. Inside the room, she lay on the bed without a word, eyes squeezed shut, body rigid. She looked like a child terrified of a doctor's needle, radiating helpless resistance. Watching her like this, I rubbed my temples, softening my tone slightly. "Open your eyes. Don't act like I'm forcing you." Summer slowly opened her eyes, a lingering resentment in her gaze as she stared at me unblinkingly. The look seemed to say, "Aren't you forcing me?" But my next sentence drained the blood from her face instantly. I pointed at the silvery lines accidentally exposed at her waist. "Can you tell me what these are?" Summer glanced at her stomach, stammering a defense. Those are birthmarks." "Do you think I'm stupid?" I sneered, popping her bubble. "Those are clearly stretch marks. You have a kid." I'd seen the mommy makeover videos on TikTok. I knew what I was looking at. "So what? You're not going to marry me anyway. Why do you care so much? Take it or leave it." Her outburst actually silenced me for a moment. Seeing this, I didn't press further. Even if Summer had been untouched, I hadn't planned on marrying her, let alone now. I wasn't looking to be a stepdad to someone else's kid. But suspicion rippled through me. Had Summer been knocked up by some scumbag? An unwed mother left high and dry? No money to raise the kid, borrowing everywhere. Ending up like this? That would be pathetic. But as soon as the thought surfaced, I banished it. Whether she was tricked by a jerk was her business, not mine. I didn't need to worry about her. Yet when I leaned down to kiss her, my movements subconsciously held a tenderness I barely noticed myself. Maybe it was for that youthful obsession, or maybe for the fragility in her eyes at that moment. Life went on unhurriedly for a month. My attitude towards Summer softened unconsciously. After all, the most important thing was being happy together. Maybe my softening attitude made her push her luck. One day, Summer lay in my arms, fingers tracing circles on my chest, and said casually, "Ethan, I heard your family runs a logistics company." When I didn't deny it, she gathered her courage, eyes hopeful. "Then, I can work at your company." The moment she said it, whatever warmth I felt vanished. My tone turned instantly cold, guarded. "You want to work at my family's company? Are you insane? When I get married later, if my wife finds out I'm keeping my ex-girlfriend on payroll, she'd skin me alive. Furthermore, forget my future marriage. Just bringing her to the family business now, my parents wouldn't let me off the hook. If they found out I was dating a single mom with baggage, they'd beat me until I couldn't walk for days." Summer's face went pale at my rebuttal. She lowered her eyes, biting her lip, long lashes hiding her disappointment. But when she moved to kiss me afterward, I could clearly feel she was being more proactive than ever. Her movements carried a deliberate intent to please, and a trace of unspeakable grievance. Time flew. Another 3 months passed. After dinner with Summer, as I was driving her back, I casually glanced at a woman standing on the roadside. I looked twice because she had a nice figure. Summer noticed my gaze, followed it, and her face instantly turned livid. It was the look of seeing a mortal enemy. Before I could react, she bolted out of the car, rushed over, grabbed the woman by the hair, and slapped her. "Bitch, pay me back." Her voice was shrill, filled with long-suppressed rage. I was stunned by the sudden turn of events. The man with the woman immediately stepped in to pull them apart, and I hurried over to separate the two brawling women. Summer pointed at the woman, chest heaving, screaming, "Maggie, you bastard! You blocked my number. I finally caught you. Pay me back." Maggie fixed her messy hair. A clear handprint bloomed on her face. Her tone was full of reckless resignation. "I told you, I don't have it. I don't have any money. Why are you coming at me? I lost 30 grand too. I'm desperate too." At this, the man next to Maggie frowned. "Maggie, you have $30,000 in debt." Maggie looked at him with a dead-eyed stare and said weakly, "Yes." The man's face darkened. He spoke immediately. "I don't think we're a match. Forget about the dating thing." With that, he turned and walked away without looking back. I gave Maggie a strange look. That guy was her date. She just got debt blocked. Though calling her a gold digger seemed harsh, she was pretty. Maggie watched the man walk away, despair flashing in her eyes before she turned a venomous glare on Summer. "Now my date is gone. No one to help me pay my debts. Are you happy now? What does your date failing have to do with me?" Summer was relentless. "If you hadn't scammed me into investing, how would I owe 50 grand? You have to pay me back." They went back and forth, arguing loudly, drawing a crowd. I frowned and whispered, "If you want to talk, find a quiet place. People are filming." Summer snapped out of it, instinctively covering her face with her hand, frantically pulling me away. Maggie stood there, watching us leave, a thoughtful glint appearing in her eyes. We found a secluded alley. Summer clenched her fists, chest still heaving, face full of panic. In her rage, she'd lost her mind and only focused on settling the score with Maggie, completely forgetting I was there. If Maggie had a loose tongue and mentioned her affair with me, and it got back to her husband's ears, the consequences would be unthinkable. Maggie followed us quickly, her gaze darting between Summer and me. She asked bluntly, "What's the relationship between you two?" Before I could speak, Summer cut in. "He's an old classmate. Because of the money you owe me, I'm in massive debt. I had no choice but to come out and find work. I asked him to help me find a job." She finished and shot me a quick look, pleading in her eyes. I sneered internally. When she borrowed money, she said her dad was sick. Now, she says she's looking for work. What a pathological liar. But 100 days of grace for one night of romance. For the sake of the last few months, I didn't expose her. I went along with it. I'm Summer's high school classmate. She asked me to help with a job referral. Summer looked at me gratefully, then turned back to glare at Maggie. "My business is none of your concern. Let's talk about you. What about the money you owe me?" Maggie put her hands on her hips, acting tough. "I told you a million times, we invested together. It failed. I can't help it. You can find me 1,000 times. I still won't have the money. Besides, I was trying to find a guy to date to help pay it off. What can I do now? I don't care. Summer was adamant. You tricked me into investing. You have to take responsibility. Maggie huffed, putting on a you can't squeeze blood from stone attitude. Like I said, no money, just a life. Sue me if you want. I didn't take your money directly, anyway. As she turned to leave, she paused, looking at Summer with a faint, mocking smile. Does your husband know you're out alone with another man? Summer's face went ghost white. She swayed, as if all her strength had been drained. I stood there, struck by lightning. My mind went blank. Husband. She actually had a husband. As Maggie's figure disappeared at the mouth of the alley, I slowly came back to my senses. I looked at Summer coldly. You have a husband? Summer's body went rigid. Her eyes darted away. After a long silence, she slowly nodded. I rubbed my throbbing temples, emotions churning in my gut. I wanted to say, how could you do this to your husband? But the words stuck in my throat. Damn it, wasn't I the homewrecker? The other man. I let out a long sigh. Don't contact me again. Summer looked up, eyes red, staring at me in disbelief. Her lips trembled, but she couldn't say a word. I continued. You've been with me for 4 months. We've done it about 100 times, even at 300 a pop. Summer, you really are cheap. If I'd known this, why did I waste so much effort chasing you in high school? Even though I already knew this white moonlight wasn't pure anymore, I never thought she'd fall this low. The whole picture was clear to me now. Summer was scammed by Maggie, owed huge debts, didn't dare tell her family or husband. So she hit up me, the old simp, for money. Then she stalled, or planned never to pay. When I sued, and she had no way out, only then did she agree to my terms. Whatever. It was over. After tossing a few insults, my anger faded. After all, her husband was the real victim here, right up there with Gavin. Summer lowered her head, hair covering her face, expression hidden. After a long time, she looked up and whispered 2 words to me in a hoarse voice. Thank you. I didn't look at her again. I turned and walked out of the alley. The night deepened, the wind blowing against my face, carrying a chill. After cutting ties with Summer, life returned to normal. I listened to my parents and started blind dating. After a few rounds, I met Lily. Her mother and my mom were best friends for years. Our families knew everything about each other. She was extremely beautiful, with gentle eyes and a quiet elegance. When she smiled, there was a light in her eyes, yet she maintained a polite distance. We dated for 3 months. Whenever she was with me, she was always polite, courteous. I couldn't feel any love from her. Our relationship felt like punching a time card. Meet once a week, dinner, movie. Occasionally I'd ask where she wanted to go, and she'd just suggest generic local spots. Neither of us felt that spark, but our families were pushing, and we didn't hate each other. So we naturally made it official, and soon after, walked down the aisle. After marriage, I was good to her. I gave her all my tenderness and was absolutely faithful. In marriage, morality and responsibility are more important than passion. Not being in love is never an excuse for cheating. A moment of indulgence often exacts an unbearable price. Besides, history shows adultery leads to disaster. My uncle was a living example. He had an affair with a married woman, got beaten half to death by her husband, and had to pay a massive settlement just to stay out of jail. Lesson learned. Of course, with Lily, I kept my guard up. If I ever found her acting suspicious or getting tangled up with someone else, I cut her off immediately. No miss. Outside the window, the sunlight was perfect. Lily walked in carrying freshly brewed tea, eyes curving into a smile as she handed it to me. I took the cup, warmth spreading from my fingertips to my heart, chasing away the shadows of the past. I only hoped the years ahead would be peaceful and still. I am Summer. Walking back from that alley, I felt a sense of liberation. Ethan's words, "Don't contact me again," meant I didn't have to live in fear anymore. When I got home, Chris wasn't asleep yet. He was sitting on the living room sofa waiting for me, the warm yellow lamp casting shadows on his tired face. Seeing me enter, he immediately stood up and walked over, wrapping me in a hug. "Why are you back so late?" I bit my lip. "It's nothing. I was shopping with Maggie and lost track of time." Chris is an honest, hardworking man. We've been together since college. After graduation, he ignored his parents' objections and moved to my city. After we married, he took on most of the housework and was always considerate to me and the baby. If he has a flaw, it's that he's poor. I'm a stay-at-home mom. He works. After the mortgage, utilities, formula, and diapers, there's basically nothing left. Even buying a set of skincare products requires saving for months. After having the baby, I wanted to find a job. But my parents were busy taking care of my brother's family. Chris's parents weren't around. No one could help watch the child. Trapped in the tiny world of our apartment, I wanted to change our situation so badly. That's why I lost my head and listened to Maggie's nonsense about the franchise. I lost the dowry money my mother left me. I ended up selling myself just to clear the payday loans. And my baby, to sneak out with Ethan, I left him the playpen. Let him sleep and play in there alone. Every time I came back from the hotel, seeing him there filled me with guilt. I failed my husband. I failed my child. Thank God it's all over. I will carry this guilt toward Chris and spend the rest of my life making it up to him. Unless one day, the thing between Ethan and me explodes, and I have to face Chris's judgment. Story complete.